I think spend more time trying to learn less of the technical stuff and understand the business. That's, I think, the tough part. The technical stuff, you can always find answers for. You could Google that. You can ask your AI nowadays. But business intuition is something, you have to earn. I also think, but at the same time, it's kind of like a catch-22. I do think you need to be curious. You need to you need to read, you need to listen to podcasts, like however you like to do that. But learn the business, speak the language that of the people you're supporting, like whether you're talking revenue or pipeline or churn, figure out what the metrics are that matter at your company and find ways to help them even without being asked. And don't be afraid to fail, because fail, we're always learning from it, and you're only going to improve yourself. Yeah, I mean, you don't need to know everything. You just need to know where to go to get the right answer, right?
Hi everyone. I'm going to have a conversation with Audrey Child, a certified Salesforce administrator at Accesso, a global technology company that provides solutions for theme parks, ski resorts, and live venues to manage their guests and operations. Audrey bridges the gap between the sales strategy and technical execution, turning the Salesforce into the engine for revenue growth rather than just a database. We're going to discuss the life of an admin, the evolution of its role, the data governance, the AI and Agentforce, the user adoption, and I hope you enjoy.
How are you?
Great, great. Hi, how are you?
Good, good. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, perfectly. You?
Good. Yeah, I can hear you perfect. What time is it where you're at?
6 p.m.
Okay,
So
okay. So not
is
too
it?
bad.
Yeah, appreciate you coming here today. Is it like 9 a.m. your time?
Yeah, it's like 9:30. So just
Yeah.
getting the day going, got the kids off to school. You'll probably see some pets running around in the background. So
That's
hopefully you
fine.
have
That's
good
cool.
editing skills.
Yeah. Yeah, let's start with a basic and simple question, which is how did you end up in a Salesforce admin role? Was it a deliberate choice or did it kind of just happen?
Oh gosh, yeah. So total accident. Um,
Mm.
so before moving into this role that I'm at, which is a great role for a great tech company, I worked and lived in Lake Tahoe, and I worked at ski resorts. My last role up
Mm.
there was an executive assistant at Kirkwood Mountain Resort. So I had no idea what Salesforce was, none. Um, and so when I started this role, the marketing admin, she was also, part-time Salesforce admin for our org. And she went on maternity leave and she never came back. So my boss
Mm.
said, "Hey, here's the keys to the org." Yeah, so it was kind of interesting. And this was before Trailhead. So
Mm.
this was many moons ago. But
That's tough.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, I had no idea what it was. So I was definitely, I would say, your definition, the accidental admin.
Mm.
But the funny part is, because let's see, so it was 12 years ago when I started this role. I was never like 100%, Salesforce admin until probably about 2 years ago. And
Mm.
I focused kind of more full time, and I let the other duties as assigned, kind of off of my plate, which I think a lot of other admins, struggle with. It's usually just kind of like a part time admin role.
Mm. Mm. I see. I see. I'm
Yeah.
curious, what does just currently, what does a typical workday look like for you? And what takes up the most time?
Yeah. Um, well, I think the thing about solo admin is there really isn't like a typical day. I think that you're constantly like doing something and then moving to the next. So 1 hour I might be deep working on a flow, and the next,
Mm.
I'm in a strategy meeting. Meanwhile, my teams is pinging me right and left. So I think it's it's not necessarily what takes up most of the time is technical configuration. I think that the latter
Mhm.
role is kind of like bridging that gap between what business wants and what Salesforce can actually do, and then trying to figure out how to build it, right? Because you could build it a billion different ways in Salesforce, but is it necessarily the way that the business needs it? So I think that's kind of a typical day for me. It's just a lot of context switching and yeah, trying to figure out how to do things the right way for the business.
What's the hardest part of being the solo admin there in that environment?
Mm, yeah, I mean, I think just the context switching, right? It's
Mm.
probably hands down. It's just like I mentioned, you might be working on one thing and then all of a sudden, you're thrown into something different, but then also it's not just that. It's, as an admin, you're managing like expectations, of people and priorities and processes and sometimes even behavior change, so sometimes it's really hard like prioritizing, telling people, hey, we're not going to be doing this yet, and still keeping that trust and the momentum moving forward. I think that's a big struggle.
I'm curious, how do you prioritize things when there is a lot of coming in, a lot of requests coming in, more requests than you can even handle?
Yeah, I think you learn, right? Like not everything that's urgent is like really actually important. And
Hmm.
lately I've kind of been leaning into like a North Star question. And the question is super easy. It's just like, is this moving revenue at our company? And if the
Mm.
answer is no, it's not at the top of the list, and after that I look at, user friction, like where can I make life easier for the team? That's
Mm.
huge. And then I move to, all right, scale, governance, adoption, training, all of that. So yeah, I mean, it's hard, to prioritize just being, the only person that is kind of like the yes or no. And
Mm.
sometimes, the most valuable things aren't things people are asking for, it's the release management, it's the proactive build that you had this aha moment or you learned from somebody else on LinkedIn, cleanup projects. Like it's those silent things that you do that really just earns trust in what you're doing.
Where do you go for support and answers when there is no Salesforce colleagues sitting next to you? I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
I mean being a solo admin is really tough. I assume, and when there is no one who can support you along the way, and there are a lot of requests coming in your way, um, what's your advice for someone who's struggling in that environment?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the great news is that like I feel like the Salesforce community, the Ohana as some people call it, they're probably one of the most generous communities in tech.
Mm.
Someone who's always willing to ask, or like if you ask them a question, they're always willing to help you or, jump on a phone call and kind of what if about. So I think we definitely have that, behind us, which helps immensely. But, you also have to get involved. You've got to join groups and webinars and stay active in LinkedIn or, just staying active. You don't have to post, maybe just kind of, comment and look at what other people are posting. But yeah, I also think that, AI tools have really, really helped me out just kind of staying
Mm.
organized, staying on top of things, especially when it comes to like more, I'm working into like architecture design, just kind of what ifing with these tools. I mean,
Mm.
it's really sped up my deliveries. Yeah.
What AI tools do you use, or your team uses?
Yeah, so we just did a Claude and a ChatGPT MCP connector,
Mm.
and so we've always had this problem where we have so many different systems and none of them talk together. And to get like a connection tool is really expensive. But we have
Mm.
Claude now, and we've connected Teams, we've connected Jira, we've connected Outlook, we've got Salesforce, and now with that, it's just kind of like the world is your oyster, right? You could ask Claude one thing and it's going to dive into all areas. So, yeah, I mean, we've really been hitting hard with Claude, but we also have people that are using chat, using
Mm.
Copilot. Everyone's using something different. I mean, there's great tools out there. I use Gamma, when I'm doing training documents to create
Hmm.
slideshows or training guides. Yeah, there's a lot of great tools out there, and it's always evolving. So you always have to kind of like stay out there and kind of figure out what's the next tool. Stay curious.
Yeah, that's cool that you have some kind of diversification in AI space. Yeah, I use Claude for myself, ChatGPT from time to time. It depends on the tasks themselves and
Yeah.
what I'm looking for. Yeah, have you touched the Agentforce there, or just not yet?
You know what? We just actually got that in February. We just
Mm.
upgraded to unlimited, so that's been really great because we get the premier support. We get a little extra features, which has been really nice. But then we got that Claude MCP connector project that we kind of got thrown at. Um, so it's on our roadmap. We do have Agentforce coming in, but it's really hard to try and figure out, right? Like, where do I start with this? And
Hmm.
our account executive has been like super helpful. I meet with her at least twice a month, and we kind of what if and the premier support that Salesforce offers, they also kind of help you and guide you in the right directions and give you use cases. And yeah, so there's a lot of things out there. It's just trying to figure out what agent is going to be more beneficial for your team. Like I mentioned, my North Star, like, is what's going to move the revenue first.
I see. I
Yeah,
see.
there's
Uh,
a lot of tools.
mhm. I see. You've touched a little bit about process and alignment things, and I remember you mentioned that this is one of your passions out there, and I'm curious. There are a lot of teams you should be dealing with, and what if the teams have different approaches and different point of views, but that's the same process. What do you do there? How you communicate with them, and yeah, how you handle that?
Yeah, that's a tough one. That's probably one
Yeah.
of the toughest roles. I would say, over the years, I've kind of learned, that all these departments look at the same data and they see completely different problems or answers, right? Um, and they're all right from where they're standing, but I feel like my job is to kind of be the translator and to create kind of
Mm,
shared definitions, and then build the trust and hope that the people are going to stop arguing about the data and start making decisions with it. So I just try and be that person, like I said, like the translator. I think that's a good way to put it. You just have to kind of find that middle ground.
that makes perfect sense. Yeah. And you've been a certified Salesforce administrator at Access for 12 years, which means a lot. And I think this is super cool. And you've had a front row seat to how much the space have changed, I think. And I'm really curious how has the Salesforce admin role has evolved over that period of time, from what you've seen from the inside.
Yeah. Wow, like I mentioned, when I first got tossed the keys to our org,
Hmm.
and said, tag, you're it, I mean, there was no trailhead, so things have changed so much in this space. When I first started, it was kind of like somebody would submit a request, and there was no
Mm.
official like ticket taking, request process. And then you just build the thing and then you move on from there and you do your other roles. But now I've kind of evolved to, where I have to understand the operations and the data quality.
Mm.
You've got to, work with adoption, because that's huge. Because if you don't have a good adoption with Salesforce, you're going to end up losing, all the quality. Um, Honestly, I think it's the business itself, though. Like, the modern admin isn't really like a configurator anymore. We're all kind of operational architects. I feel like, you've got your
Mm.
systems that you're tying together to get to the ultimate goal, and where it's going to go. I mean, who knows, right? Things are changing and
Yeah.
evolving in this space so quick. It's, you just have to keep evolving, keep changing, keep learning, stay curious. But yeah, it's evolved quite a lot.
There is a shift that a lot of admins talk about from being the Salesforce configurator to the more strategic partner to the business. I'm curious, have you noticed the specific moment where you felt like you are now the strategic partner? What was the moment, and what was that previously before that movement and transition? What was it like?
Yeah, I would say, I think it's more subtle than, just
Mm.
like anything else. I mean, I feel like when you're having conversations with your leadership and it stops being like, hey, can you build this? And it starts being, what do you think we should do? You know, I think that's when that leadership and users, believe in what you build and what your thought is and the roadmap that you've identified. I think once you cross that line and start being that person where they're asking you, what do you think we should do? Your job changes completely.
Mm.
I don't know if I could really, I think it's when we started talking about, tying together, the people in the process and the tools and being that, connective tissue that kind of is woven in between all of those, I think that's when we started really identifying pain points and, quick wins and stuff like that. And our adoption just, took off, and things were just easier for people, and we were getting analytics that leadership liked. I think once you start building that and showing your worth and showing what the platform can do, that's when you turn into that strategic partner for the business.
Makes sense. All right. I want to give you some space here, and my next question would be like, is there something about the life of a solo admin that you always wanted to talk about, but now no one really asking you about that?
um yeah, I think it's, oh boy, I would say it's like those invisible wins, right? Like, you gosh, I'm like, how do I word this?
Mm.
So I think, like, so much of a solo admin job is, doing prevention work, making sure like the data is correct. So it's telling the right story, but it's all like these, something that's hidden, it's
Mm.
just when you're doing the job right, the org is just going to run. And the better you are at that job, the more invisible you become. So I feel, and that's hard, you want to get those pats on the back, you want to know that you're doing a good job. And how are you going to put on your review that you prevented chaos because it's not
Mm.
visible, So I think it's those invisible wins, you want them to be called out and noticed, but that's tough.
Absolutely, absolutely. And have you ever tried to show them up, like show your management about all the great things you've done for them? And was there any reaction or feedback from them if you ever did that?
Yeah, there's several things you can do, right? You can track your tickets, the time you've spent on it, the dollar amount, the ROI between, features or,
Mm.
projects that you're working on. I think people are always impressed when you put, the pain point that they had, the solution that you created, and the ROI behind it. People are always, that always catches their attention. But if you just stay quiet, what do you expect's going to happen?
Yeah. Okay. All right, I got it. Let's move forward gradually to the data governance. You've touched it just a bit, and I'd like to ask you, um, you know, I'm pretty sure you think that this is important. We all know this is important, right? But how do you explain to somebody who thinks this is, this is not that important, that this is actually something you should be focusing on?
Yeah. Yeah, that's hard. Yeah. Data governance is not sexy, right? Well, not to most users. I mean, I usually just try and reframe it, you know, talking about trust and user experience, and if the data isn't reliable, what that means to them. So, like,
Mm,
maybe for a sales leader, that might be, having a bad forecast and being called out in a pipeline
mm,
call. You know what I mean? Nobody wakes up and gets excited about it. They care whether the system helps them, do their job without creating friction and preventing embarrassing moments.
mm.
So it's just trying to let them know, it's about creating an experience where people can trust what they're looking at. I know it is kind of boring, but I think once people get called out on it, like, okay, yeah, I get it.
What are the data management mistakes you've seen throughout your process, throughout your projects that you might mention here, and you think those are the most important ones?
I would say overcomplicating things.
Mm,
I'm a huge believer in keeping it simple, right? And I think that a lot of people, I mean, Salesforce has so much functionality already native with it. And I think people just tend to overcomplicate things. And then that overcomplication turns into bad adoption. And then eventually your data is going to get messy. And,
mm,
when the process becomes clear and simpler, the data tends to improve naturally. But I think it's just overcomplicating the system when, you're looking at, the features and functionalities of Salesforce, and they might already have something in there, that you could use to make it easier on yourself, because nobody
mm.
wants to spend a lot of time building something new, and on your users. I think it's just having the knowledge to kind of figure out what those are.
Yeah,
Got to
yeah.
you got to always be learning. Got to know your org too, right? That's the other thing. Get in there, dive around, experiment, see what you have.
Yeah. Yeah, what about the user adoption? Well, what do you think works? What do you think works better? I mean, is it the visual things or is it like just a conversation? What works better?
Oh boy. Yeah, that's a tough one. I feel like I've tried them all too. I mean, we've done, recorded trainings. We've done lunch and learns. We do dashboards, leaderboards, gentle nudges, not so gentle nudges. Um, Training's hard, and you can deliver like a beautiful training session. And if you're not staying on top of it, a week later, people are going to be back to doing things the old way. So I feel like what I've learned is adoption isn't really the
Mhm.
training problem. It's the design that's the problem.
Mm,
So I feel like, if like the processes and the workflows have too many fields that users have to click, or you have to go too many places, not everything is in one area, you know, no amount of training is going to save that. They're always going to find a workaround. So you just have
mm.
to, kind of simplify things again. I always do take it back to my KISS theory, keep it simple.
Mm,
Um, yeah. So one thing I did do that was a lot of fun, and this is like one of those aha moments, but
mm,
it was a gamification piece I did for the month of October, last October, where I turned our Salesforce org into like a trick or treat for the users.
mm,
And it was a month long adoption challenge, just to see where we could increase adoption. And so I built a custom object, some automation, dashboard so people could see it, and users, as they were going through their normal day to day, they were finding, treats, which were just, like, hey, you won, blah, blah, blah,
mm.
or tricks, which were just ultimately bad, Halloween dad jokes, But as they explored Salesforce, they earned daily prizes and they competed against, different departments, and it was a huge success. Like I think we were at like a 59% increase in our engagement,
Cool.
which is a huge improvement just in adoption, and we're not forcing anyone in a training room, and people are learning by exploring
Mm,
Salesforce. And a little competition goes a long way, I'm finding, with people. Sometimes you just
mm.
have to try, right? You can't just try one thing. If it doesn't work, just say forget it. You just have to keep trying because something's going to stick, or maybe multiple things stick.
Yeah. And do your users like Salesforce? That's a tricky question, I know. Because, I've heard a lot of users saying that, oh man, this is so complicated.
I think it's common. I mean, we all see like the gifs and the
Mm,
funny, cartoon images, like update your Salesforce org. And sometimes I feel like my face is on there, with my team. Do people like Salesforce? I don't think so. But again, that's where it comes into, like, for an admin, is like, make them like it,
yeah.
make things easier, make these AI tools connected into Salesforce so they don't have to jump into the UI. They can just get that data from, the tool, and make it so they can find it wherever they're working. I think as you start like drilling into their pain points more, um, you can find ways for people to not like it just a little bit less, and that little bit less, I think, helps. I also think, take the time to talk to your users, schedule one-on-one meetings, and you'll find, common themes that are quick wins that make
Mm.
all the difference in the world that you've never even thought about. um yeah, so hopefully the goal is to make them love it a little bit more.
Makes sense, yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. Me too. Okay. So yeah, it doesn't matter whether your users are allowed. Just a joke. Okay. Sorry for jumping from one topic to another, but
No, you're good.
let's get just briefly to the data governance topic. And we've talked about the mistakes, and I wanted to hear you speaking about really briefly regarding the advice how to structure the data governance properly.
Ooh, boy, yeah.
I love your reaction.
Yeah, no, I know that's a tough one. I feel like you have to just kind of dive in, and you have to make things visible and accountable. So,
Mm,
for instance, like, we ran this huge like pipeline and forecast kind of project, and where we identified the stage definitions. We took the compliance metrics and we made the hygiene visible, and again, bringing back into like that competitive nature of our sales reps, right? Because everybody wants to be at the top of the leaderboard.
mm,
So making that visible and actually talking about it in meetings too, and this is where leaders can get involved, is making sure they're talking about this stuff so the users know that we're looking at the hygiene.
mm.
um, I think you also have to be careful about that, though, because governance can kind of feel like a slap on the hand sometimes. So you want to make sure the team knows like you're moving towards an end goal with that. And you're not, they're not getting their hand slap. It's just, one metric that we're looking at to improve everything for everyone. Yeah.
Regarding the processes within your company, has there ever been the situation where you knew that something was set up wrong, but the resistance was too much strong for you to change it?
Yeah. And, I feel like when I first started, I wanted to do everything like the way that I thought it should be done, and I
Mm,
think because I thought I was right, right? And you would launch that and it just wouldn't stick. And so what I've been seeing is sometimes you just have to kind of phase it out, right? And do what the people, the users, the leadership team is asking, and then let some of those pain points that you have identified and they don't quite get it, let them kind of experience that, and then
mm.
it'll come to fruition and just naturally kind of roll itself out. And then, eventually you can come to like a common ground and make both worlds happy. But yeah, I think it's just trying to kind of be that person to try different things, try what the team wants to do, and then just evolve, in phases, and just continuously, change things until it works for everybody. It's not necessarily, wrong because, everybody sees it in different ways. It's just trying to find that, that common thing that everybody's aiming to get, the goal, and yeah, it's tough. It's really tough, and sometimes you don't get feedback, pardon me. So that makes it even tougher. You're always trying to get feedback from people, and sometimes you just end up guessing, and that's difficult too. You got to know how to engage your stakeholders and get information from them to improve things.
Yeah, I think feedback is a kind of essential part of everybody's job. Yeah, and feedback. How do you actually measure the adoption between the users? If we're talking about the feedbacks and all of that.
Yeah, I think that measurement for that is tough, but I think what you'll notice is your users become more engaged with what you're doing, and they might start asking you, to create this field or add some more selections
Hmm.
to a pick list. They become like more involved in what Salesforce actually has and want to improve it. I think that's when you know that you've got good adoption. But it's hard to measure, right? I still feel like it's a little bit more of a gauge. I still haven't figured out the metrics, if you were to actually measure something. So if anyone has any ideas, I am all open to those.
The great metric is when the person you've been training is saying that they love Salesforce.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. And I might catch it on video too.
Yeah, yeah. Yes. Okay, all right. Regarding you know, looking back, what advice would you like to receive if you would be, just starting out as a sales or sell admin, and you've known a lot of problems that you would be encountering along the way. What advice would you like to receive?
Yeah, you know, um, I think spend more time trying to learn less of the technical stuff and
Mm,
understand the business. That's, I think, the tough part. The technical stuff, you can always find answers for. You could Google that. You can ask your AI nowadays, but business intuition is something, you have to earn. Um,
mm,
I also think, but at the same time, it's kind of like a catch 22. I do think you need to be curious. You need to you need to read, you need to listen to podcasts, like however you like to do that. You need but, learn the business, speak the language, that of the people you're supporting, like whether you're talking revenue or pipeline or churn, figure out what the metrics are that matter at your company and find ways to help them, even without being asked, and don't be afraid to fail, because
Mm.
fail, we're always learning from it and you're only going to improve yourself. Yeah. I mean, you don't need to know everything. You just need to know where to go to get the right answer, right?
Can I, if you don't mind, can I ask you what fails bring you, to the state, to your current state and your current experience, what you learn from them?
Oh boy. Documentation.
Mm.
Keeping up with data hygiene, um, doing everything that is asked and not questioning those things. Um, I think that admins know a lot more than what they think they do. And I think sometimes we have to be okay with, saying, no,
Mm.
I don't think that's the right way to do things, Um, and because otherwise, the results are, cleanups, that are just endless, you're going to save yourself like a ton of time if you just kind of take a moment after you've done something, document it, retire that field or whatever you need to do, to just not have to do that same fail again, I don't know
Yeah.
if I could really come up with some good examples right now, but I know they're out there.
No worries at all. All right. Well, where do you think our Salesforce space is moving? And can you imagine in 3 or 5 years what Salesforce would look
Oof.
like? That's a tough
Yeah.
one.
Well, I think a lot happens in like 3 to 5 months in this space. So I feel like 3 to 5 years is way out of my crystal ball. Um, but I think, with all the recent announcement of like headless 360 and the direction of, AI, I think the UI is going to matter less and less. And I think it goes back to that future role of the admin. Users aren't going to be really clicking on the screen anymore. And you're
Hmm.
going to have to focus more, pardon me, on, orchestrating the systems and the processes and surfacing it all, through AI. I think that admins are going to be in really good shape if they start kind of thinking a little more like architects. I think, yeah, I mean, everything's evolving so fast. It's really hard to say in 3 to 5 years, but I think all you can do is just kind of keep up with, what's going on now and, and listening to the ideas people have out there and just staying current. And yeah, who knows? Maybe we'll see. Maybe Salesforce is just going to do what we ask it to do in our minds.
Yeah, maybe pets will be using AI. Who knows?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that'd be
but
wild, right?
yeah, maybe. Do you think AI will take your job? I mean, not yours specifically, but I mean, admin jobs or Salesforce developers jobs. Yeah,
I think you always need, I know this is like the question everybody's asking right now, right?
sure.
I think that you still need to have that people kind of personality and judgment with AI. AI is amazing. Don't get me wrong. I
Mm.
use it every day, multiple times a day. But I do feel confident that, if you're keeping up and you're staying, active in your training, that I think you're going to even become more important.
Mm.
I think that, yeah, I mean, I don't think so. I mean, yeah, like data entry and stuff like that. Maybe you need to start shifting, and focusing on different areas of your role, and finding what you can improve on. But I think we're all going to be okay.
I hope so.
I think we need that human touch, with business because how many times do you get an email or a text message and you're like, oh, that was so AI, like, and you just delete
Yeah.
it, right? You need that personalization. Even if it started with AI, that's totally fine, but you got to put a little twist on it, a little spin. Something fun catches my eye, I'll probably like reach out to you, if you make it fun, and I don't know. I just think we need that human element. That's important.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we've all heard, horror stories, right? Like how it's, completely gone rogue and affected, caused some issues in people's orgs. I think those are just the things you have to think about, putting those guardrails in place. One thing, if we're just talking from a solo admin, don't be afraid to get involved. I think
Mm.
um that was a big fear of mine, when I first started out in my position, oh, I don't want to go into a user group and, I was always very timid. But the more I started talking to the people, the more it was like, oh, wow, this is great. I can learn so much from
Mm.
these people and like build these relationships. And now with like all the video conferencing, you can make friends with people over, in different continents. I've been in, groups, like walking, groups, step groups with people in Slack and made some really good relationships. So I think what I would say is, get comfortable with getting uncomfortable, and then
Mm.
I think what you'll find on the other side is pretty cool, Get out there and just chit chat with people like this. I would never, jump into a chit chat with someone like a podcast. And you know what? Why not? Let's all just do
Yeah.
something different and have fun with it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Thank you, Audrey, for coming here today. It was a real pleasure to chat with you. I appreciate you coming.
Yeah, Max, it's been a joy. Thank you so much. And I'm glad we were able to connect. I know we had a couple of vacations in between our chit chat.
Yeah.
So thank you so much.
Yeah, that's a cool coincidence, And I really appreciate you coming here. Yeah, again. Thank you, Audrey, and have a
All
nice
right.
day. Yeah, and stay in touch. Bye bye.
Sounds great. Thank you. You too. Bye.